So here's an idea on how to get started. You start announcing this in your bulletins, from the pulpit, in your email blasts, etc. Every other Sunday, after worship for 20 to 30 minutes, a bunch of us are gathering in the whatever room to form a circle and explore rhythms. It's all ages and all levels, and we encourage families and the elderly and children and whoever wants to join us. Emphasize the fun part. And then you start. You gather everybody in a circle. I find it works best in a circle. And you start from the ground up. Everybody claps on the first beat of a 4-beat measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It's going to feel very silly. People will laugh, and they will inevitably make self-deprecating jokes about their musical ability. I try to encourage the laughter, but discourage the jokes, at least jokes of that nature. Then you change it to beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Again, we are starting from the ground up. We're including everybody in this. Everybody should be able to do this. Then maybe you try clapping on beats 1 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on beats 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then maybe you split up the circle and have half the circle clap on beats 1 and 3 and half the circle clap on beats 2 and 4. And just ask them what that feels like. 1, 2, 3, 4, while the other half claps 1, 2, 3, 4. Then how about introducing a melody on top of that? While people are clapping, you start singing. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, and so forth. And then you ask them to sing it with you while they're clapping. Maybe you switch up the sides, and the half that was clapping on 1 and 3 now claps on 2 and 4, and the half that was clapping on 2 and 4 now claps on 1 and 3. And you ask them how that feels, right? Then you can start introducing offbeats, right? Maybe you ask people to clap on beat 1 and then on the end of beat 2. So 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. And then maybe you have them, after they get that, clap on beat 2 and then the end of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And at this point, they're starting to feel actually a little bit confident, which is a good thing. You might not get to this until the second or third session, and that's okay. It's just fun. The whole point of this is that it's fun. After they get more familiar with the idea of clapping on different beats or divisions of the beat, then you can ask them to invent their own clapping pattern. Kids are often a lot more brave than adults when it comes to this, so you might have more luck having a child then decide what the new clapping pattern should be. And they might come up with something really cool. A couple little thoughts before we get further. I think we get into really dangerous territory when we teach correctness in music. When we're reading, choral octavos, certainly composers have written down their intentions and we can follow them. But I think, especially with youth, if we get into the mindset of teaching how to correctly do music, that music is a thing that can be done correctly or incorrectly, I think it limits our ability to explore, and I think musical exploration is really important. These sorts of rhythm sessions and allowing people to decide their own rhythmic patterns and then share those and experiment playing instruments that they're not comfortable with and doing things that feel slightly silly and allowing them to laugh, I think it's a profound thing, and I think it's a huge gift you can give whatever your organization is. I think people need to also be invited into playful exploration, to allow themselves to shed expectations of shame and to just play. I think it's good to remember that music is something that is played, that it is a plaything and it can be playtime. So we are allowed to have fun, and you can model that. Another thing I should mention is that you shouldn't be too surprised if some of your best choral singers, wherever you are, actually have a lot harder time with this than you'd think. In my experience working with a lot of church choirs, we spend a great deal of time on musical phrasing and diction and talking about diphthongs and proper pronunciation of things and vocal support and breathing and all of that. And that's fabulous. That's wonderful. I find that we often spend considerably less time on rhythmic stuff and really internalizing rhythms in our body and being able to be rhythmically independent within a group. So some of your top singers, if you give them a syncopated line that they don't already know, they might have a harder time with it than you'd think, which is why it's even more important to do this. Now, once they're familiar with basic rhythmic patterns and syncopations and that sort of thing, you can give them new games. You can have them tap out some polyrhythms, for example, which is always good for our health. A simple 2/3 and then switch it up to a 3/2 perhaps. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Always good for the brain. You can count out a measure and then ask them to close their eyes and count out more measures in their head and then all clap together on a certain beat. So for example, if I was to count out a measure in 4/4, counting out the quarter notes, and then ask you to count then 4 more measures in your head and then clap on beat 4 of that 4th measure, could you do it? Let's try. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you clap with me? Let's try one more. I'll count out 4 beats, and you then count in your head 5 measures, and you clap on the end of 3. We'll make it a little harder this time. So again, you're counting out 5 measures, and you're clapping on the end of 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you do it? Did you get close? Maybe? This can be kind of fun. And then we've got claves. Where are my claves? There they are. These. It could be clave time. These are claves. One clave, another clave. Clave also refers to a rhythmic pattern, which is often played on the claves. This rhythmic pattern is so fundamental to Afro-Cuban music, so many different styles of Afro-Cuban music too, and so much so that the word that they have chosen for this instrument, as well as the rhythmic pattern that I'm about to show you, is also the word for key in the Spanish language, clave. Clave means key for like a door. So the clave, the keystone of samba, mambo, rumba, and a myriad of other genres is this. It is 3 dotted quarters followed by an 8th rest and then 2 straight quarter notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. That's it. That's the clave rhythm. That's the clave rhythm. So try it with me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Repetition is key. Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes, as we all know. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. Maybe you write this out on a board. If you have a board in front of you, people like reference visually. And maybe they don't understand music notation yet, and that's totally fine. You can find other ways of notating it. You can literally write out numbers, right? Whatever you can do to help them internalize these rhythms will help them be able to play them independently later on. And maybe at this time you also choose to introduce more instruments. So perhaps you've got a mother-daughter combo that really wants to play djembes together. You get 2 djembes and you teach them a basic djembe pattern. How about this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You teach them that they should play the middle of the drum with this part of their hand and let it bounce so it resonates. You teach them that if they're playing this on the floor, they put the drum between their knees, but then tilt it a little bit so that the sound which comes out of the bottom of the drum can resonate best. And then you teach them to use the tips of their fingers on the side of the drum to get that kind of higher pitched thing. Right? Really simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And later you can introduce some finger stuff, right? Get them on that and have them practice together until they're really comfortable with it. You'll also find with time that people start gravitating towards specific instruments. Maybe someone really likes playing djembe, or another person really prefers tambourine or shakers or the claves or something else. That's great. So you can continue cultivating their specific preferences and offering musical suggestions for those specific instruments as well. So then soon, ideally, you'll have a dozen or so folks in your community who are very comfortable beating out rhythmic patterns and playing various percussion instruments and holding their own while others play different parts. Congratulations, you now have a rhythm section. What do you do with it? Well, maybe you start a tradition, and every month, on the first Sunday of every month, you intentionally program rhythmic hymns and invite people to come 15 minutes before the service starts so that you can teach them their beat patterns, or they can come up with their own beat patterns, and you can practice it a few times so that at that point in the service they can come forward and play their instruments, or they can bring the instruments to their seats and play them there, whatever makes the most sense. Maybe you start a new tradition where during the passing of the peace there's also a passing of egg shakers. Egg shakers, by the way, are very cheap. It's like $1 each. People pass around egg shakers, and then a few minutes later during the as the gifts are being collected after the offertory is played, maybe everybody sings Halle Hallelujah, but with egg shakers all spread out in the congregation. Something like this. Halle, halle, hallelujah, right? And how cool would that be? Maybe there's even a designated basket in the narthex where people pick up their various percussion instruments or egg shakers, and then as they leave the church, they leave those behind for the next person. Now, I know some of you might be thinking in response to this, well, gosh, isn't that risky? Like, what if these little instruments get in the hands of children and they start playing them? Well, yeah. How cool is that?